Imagine a country that, in your lifetime, could lose 9 out of every 10 people. Not from a war, not from a plague, not from a famine, a flood, or anything you could point a camera at. This place is disappearing for the quietest reason there is. People simply stopped having children. In 2023, the average woman in South Korea was on track to have just 0.72 children in her whole life. The next year, it slipped below 0.7. To hold a population steady, that number has to be about 2.1. So this country isn't a little under replacement. It's running at barely a third of it. And in its capital, it's closer to half a child per woman. Sit with that for a second. What does a third of replacement actually do to a country? It means every generation is about a third the size of the one before it. Picture 100 grandparents, then 30-something parents, then a dozen kids. Run that forward a few more rounds and the country doesn't just shrink. It thins out toward nothing. The figures people throw around sound invented. They aren't. The country's own National Assembly once ran the trend all the way out. If nothing changed, they projected the last of its citizens would be born around the year 2750. That is a government putting a date on the extinction of its own people. And back in 2006, an Oxford demographer named David Coleman warned that this country could become the first in the world to disappear purely from low birth rates. At the time, it sounded like a stretch. Today, it reads like a weather report. But forget the year 2750. You don't need 7 centuries to see this. You can watch it right now. Start with the schools. Across the countryside, elementary schools are holding entrance ceremonies with a single new student. Sometimes none at all. The country has already shut down thousands of schools, and the closures keep coming because there are no children left to fill them. Classrooms built for 40 now echo with 4. A school is usually the last thing a small town fights to keep. When it goes, the town is next. So look at the towns. Demographers there have a blunt label for this. They mark hundreds of districts as at risk of extinction. Not struggling, not shrinking. Extinction. The young move to the capital chasing work, the old stay behind, and one by one the lights go out in places that have stood for centuries. You can drive through villages where the youngest resident is in their 60s. It gets stranger. In whole stretches of the countryside, the maternity wards have closed. There is no one left to deliver. A pregnant woman in some counties now has to drive an hour or more just to find a hospital that can bring her baby into the world. A country that cannot deliver its own children in the places people live. That is not a prediction. That is the map today. Now think about the army. This country sits across a tense border from a hostile neighbor, and it defends that border with young men it drafts at 20. But the pool of 20-year-old men is set to roughly halve within 2 decades. You cannot conscript children who were never born. A nation that spent 70 years braced for one kind of threat is being quietly hollowed out by a completely different one. And while the young vanish, the old pile up. This country is aging faster than any society in recorded history. It has already crossed the line into what demographers call a super-aged society, where more than 1 in 5 people is over 65. It also has the highest rate of elderly poverty in the developed world. So picture the shape of what's coming. Fewer and fewer workers holding up more and more retirees in a country running out of the young people who pay for any of it. So ask the obvious question, why? Why would an entire nation, one of the richest and most advanced on Earth, quietly decide to stop? It isn't one reason. It's a stack of them, and every single one is rational. Housing in the capital is some of the most expensive on the planet compared to what people actually earn. Raising a child there means entering an education arms race that starts before kindergarten, where families pour a fortune into private academies just to keep their kid from falling behind. People there work some of the longest hours in the developed world. And for women especially, the deal is brutal. Have a child, and you often face a career you can't return to, a husband whose share of the housework barely moves, and a society that still expects you to carry all of it. So a growing number of young women there are looking at that bargain and saying, calmly, no thank you, here's the part that should really stop you. South Korea saw this coming, and it tried to buy its way out. Over roughly the last 20 years, the government spent more than $200 billion on cash bonuses, baby payments, and incentives to get people to have children. The birth rate didn't level off. It didn't even slow down. It kept falling, straight through all that money, to the lowest number any country has ever recorded. That's the warning, hidden inside the warning. This is not a problem you fix with a check. By the time it shows up in the data, the reasons are baked so deep into the cost of living, the hours, the housing, and the expectations that no single program can reach them. And here's the line you really don't want to hear. This is not only one country's story. Japan has been aging and shrinking for years. China's population has already started to fall, decades ahead of what anyone forecast, with hundreds of millions fewer babies in the pipeline. Italy, Spain, much of Europe, all sliding the same way. This place isn't an exception to the modern world. It's the front of the line. It is simply the first country to show everyone else, in sharp and undeniable focus, what's waiting further down the road. So look at it clearly, because your own country is somewhere on that same road, just further back. A nation can lose 9 out of 10 people without a war, without a plague, without a single shot fired. It can happen in clean apartments and quiet hospital wings. One personal decision at a time until the math turns and there is no turning it back. South Korea is just the first to show you what that looks like. The only real question left is who's next.